So Marvel has released the Amazing Spider-Man Omnibus 1 through 6. They've done Spectacular Spider-Man Volume 1. We have an announcement of a later Marvel Team-Up Omnibus, but today we're talking about Web of Spider-Man Volume 1. Stay tuned and watch this video until the end. And we're back. My name is Taylor. This is Taylor Talks Comics. Or you might be watching this on the Organic Price Books YouTube channel. No matter where you're watching it, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment down below. Those things all help the YouTube algorithm put my videos in front of people's eyeballs that don't know my channel exists, maybe other comic book fans that haven't scoped out my content, and I really appreciate you helping out with any of those things. So today, we're talking about the Web of Spider-Man Omnibus. This is the Web of Spider-Man Volume 1 Omnibus. And like I said in the preamble there, we've had Amazing Spider-Man 1 through 6. We've had a Spectacular Spider-Man Volume 1. And now we're getting Web of Spider-Man, with a Marvel team-up to come later in the future as well. Now, this book really blew me away with how good the content was. Because I was a little trepidatious about this content, because I've read some of these issues before, but never like in succession like I did today, or this past week. I was a little trepidatious because it is a spin-off title of the Amazing Spider-Man series. And also sometimes, especially this era of Marvel, you'll have some storyline bits continue on through Amazing, Spectacular, and Web of. And if you're not reading all three of them in succession, which this doesn't include every issue of those other titles, some things could be missing, some plot lines or things like that, because everything that happens in Marvel is happening at the same time. So you can't have like something happen, Spider-Man happened in the Amazing Spider-Man issue, and then it not affect him in the Web of that thing. I'll get into that in a little bit. But I was kind of blown away how amazing this was, even in the midst of all that. So this is the, I think this is one of the DM covers. It's 3 covers for this omnibus. And the spine is really, really cool. So it's got a black spine, which is going to match your Spectacular and your Amazing Spider-Man omnibuses. But they have like this web design up here with the Web of lettering treatment there. Really, really cool design package. And then you'll see like this almost modern day splatter effect too, which we'll see that design emulated throughout the rest of the book in itself. You get some of the creators names that you'll see in the back or on the spine there. In the back, we get a lot of the covers, which this series had a really great run of covers, I will say. Everything from the early Charles Vest stuff all the way down to this trio of Sienkiewicz covers, which I really liked, which we'll get into. Take the dust jacket off. The flaps just have some your typical creator bios and a little info on what's going on here. The book itself has 2 covers on the front and back. And they're both modern colored versions of the covers that you'll see on the inside. Not my favorite. Actually, now that I say it, going back to whether this is a DM or standard, well, no, those are 2 different images. Traditionally, the image you see on the spine is from the standard edition, so I think this is a DM. But back to what I was saying, these are modern colored, so I don't love that. But the important thing is all the content on the inside of this book is true to its original coloring. So we got some black end sheets there. And here's some of that treatment I was telling you about with the modern, not the modern coloring, but the spine treatment, that effect on the back, which we'll see throughout. And you'll see it right there too. And it does have a warning here. This content contains depictions of racism and suicide. Reader discretion is advised. That's all true. I will say that there are 2 depictions of suicide, 2 completely different stories and issues. So be forewarned, if that is a trigger for you and you encounter the first one, there will be another one to follow. Which, I mean, if that's something that really does trigger you and you want more info on that, you can DM me on any of my social medias in the content below, and I'll tell you which specific issues they are, so you can avoid them if you would like. All the writers, pencilers, inkers, letters, colorists, all the credits right here. And great table of contents. We don't always get a great table of contents, but this one does have a great one. Each issue listed with which page it starts on and the month and year that it came out with the issue title. That's all I'm asking for. Good stuff there. Now it starts off with 2 pages from 2 different issues, which I believe, yeah, so we have Amazing Spider-Man 261, and then a page from Spectacular Spider-Man 100. So just 1 page from each. And it's kind of setting up this first issue of Web Of. And Web Of starts off with this great Charles Vess cover, and then we're getting into it. So the Spider-Man had Amazing Spider-Man for the longest time, and then had Marvel Team Up. Marvel Team Up was the first spin-off title, but it was more of a title to have Spider-Man elevate other superheroes. So it'd have another superhero starring alongside him in every issue that Marvel wanted to prop up, whether it be for sales or for popularity, or just put more spotlight on those characters, because everyone's going to pick up the spot, an issue with Spider-Man on it. Spectacular was the first one that really had like a continuity with Amazing Spider-Man and a true spin-off title. And then Web Of followed that. So with those first 2 pages that you saw from Spectacular and Amazing, we're getting into the story of this first issue where Spider-Man still has a symbiote suit attached to him. And he's fighting these guys that are called the Vulturians, which I love these guys. Like, this is like Tokusatsu Power Ranger stuff with these guys. Let me give you so the first cover of issue number 2, you'll see the Vulturians guys right here. Like, it looks like Silverhawks also, if you remember that Saturday morning cartoon. And this predates Silverhawks by a year. I am curious if that had any sort of inspiration. I don't know. But the famous Bell scene where he gets the symbiote to actually leave him in here. So this early story of the Vulturians, these are guys that stole the technology of the Vulture while the Vulture is in prison. And they have this gang where they're trying to, rob banks and whatnot. Kingpin's looking on. Kingpin is not a fan of these guys, so he's kind of rooting for Spider-Man. It kind of has an interesting caveat there. Starting off with this series, Mary Jane and Peter Parker are just friends. They have an interesting dynamic, kind of like Jerry and Elaine on Seinfeld, where they're past boyfriend, girlfriend, and now just being platonic friends. And that plays a part in here as well. So there's 2 things throughout here, because like I said earlier, my trepidations of, will there be things missing? Will something happen in Amazing Spider-Man or Spectacular Spider-Man that while I'm reading Web Of, I missed that story beat? Because Marvel, especially in this era, does a good job of saying like they'll have some story beat in a panel, and they'll say, oh, here's a perfect example. See Secret Wars number 12. Little side note, Owls is Jim Owsley, aka Christopher Priest. Christopher Priest was the editor on a lot of this. But would you be missing those story beats? So Marvel does a good job of having those in there, those pieces of continuity. Like, if you miss this, you just have to go back and read that issue, which is fine. I like that. I almost wish there was more of that in this comic book, or this book itself, because there's 2 particular story beats that were missing from just reading Web Of like this, and not reading all the Spectacular Amazing Spider-Man issues. Before I continue, though, I do want to say what is included in this book. I should have said that first. So this Omnibus is over 1,000 pages, almost 1,100 pages. It includes Web of Spider-Man 1 through 34, Annuals 1, 2, and 3, and then it does have a few issues of Amazing Spider-Man. So Amazing Spider-Man 268, 293 through 295, and then Spectacular Spider-Man 131 through 133. So those last bits of Amazing and Spectacular are the Kraven's Last Hunt storyline, which is kind of it's a conclusion of this omnibus. There are still a few issues after that, but it's like the big build-up and arc that concludes this omnibus. But other than that, you don't have a lot of Amazing and Spectacular issues in here. So one thing that was missing from this storyline-wise, unless I just missed it totally when I was reading this, if that's the case, please put in the comments that, like, I'm just an idiot and I missed it. But he'll be constantly moving back and forth between the black costume and the red and blue costume without any sort of explanation. Now, when he does have the black costume, he's removed the symbiote. So this new black costume is just fabric, just like his other red and blue costume, but it's just, black and white to look just like the alien costume did. So he's going back and forth. Like, one issue he'll be wearing red and blue, one issue he'll be wearing black. Some issues he does both. And there's no explanation for why he goes back and forth. I don't know if it's just a style choice, if he's just feeling the black costume one day he wants a little bit more pop of a color, so he goes for red and blue. but I just kept assuming that he was talking about that in an amazing issue or spectacular issue, and I just missed it. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe it was never addressed. Maybe it was up to the artist that just whatever costume he felt like drawing that day. And again, that's not a super important story beat that like affected the actual story itself. It's just a curiosity I had more than anything. The other thing is I told you, I'm trying not to spoil things, but I told you that we started off this omnibus with Mary Jane and Peter Parker in a platonic friendship. Now, there's a certain point in this omnibus towards the end where they are dating again. Or they're actually married again. They're married, yeah. So, and that could be a spoiler, but again, it's not even explain this omnibus, so it's not an actual spoiler, but this actual omnibus itself and Mary Jane and Peter Parker are constantly breaking up and getting back together. So I assume that if you're watching this and you're going to read this, that's just something that you're used to happening anyways. But it happens outside of one of these issues. So I'm assuming it happened either amazing or spectacular. Probably amazing since I was like the headliner of the three. But it's not really addressed in here as far as like, oh, by the way, this really massive shift change in the story happened. And this is what happened. It just, one issue, they're platonic friends, and the next issue, they're married. So that's another thing that I missed. But that's it. Other than that, there's nothing else missing. Other than that, this reads really, really great. I don't feel like I was missing out on anything else on not reading amazing and spectacular with reading this omnibus. So other than those two things, which the first one, like I said, is just a style thing. It's not really imperative to the story. This omnibus reads really great. This story was fun. This was a Dominic Fortune story, a character that was created by Howard Chaykin. And just a quick tidbit, Fantagraphics has a book coming out later this year called Lost Marvels, collecting all of Howard Chaykin's Dominic Fortune stories. So it's really cool to see him in here. This follows up a Marvel team-up story where Dominic Fortune appeared earlier. Now, Dominic Fortune was a pulp hero, 1930s era pulp hero. So in this story, since this is present day as of like the 80s or whatever Marvel's sliding timeline is, he's an older hero at that point. So there's so many fun stories throughout here. And Web of really struggles to find its identity of what it wants to be. Because I think Marvel Editorial really had a goal in mind for having a distinct style choice or stories choice between Spectacular, Amazing, and Web of. It seemed like Spectacular was more of trying to lean heavier on the Peter Parker stories. Amazing Spider-Man was just the overall headliner. And Web of started this thing where it tried to not... I don't want to say like mystery in the sense that like it was like a murder mystery trying to solve anything, but it's more of like Spider-Man on more of like the grittier crime side of things. I don't want to say detective either because he's not really a detective, but he is kind of leaning into his journalistic parts of his character more so than others. Now this storyline, these punk kids literally set his apartment on fire. So he's living in squalor here for a while. Typical Peter Parker melodrama that I absolutely love and eat up. Like, he's constantly trying to find ways to make money. He's broke, trying to take care of Aunt May, trying to take care of Mary Jane, trying to fight the mob, while also there's punk street kids that he's fighting. Jonah Jameson's constantly giving him grief. So there's all that stuff's still present in here, and it does feel fresh. Like, it's not like your standard typical Spider-Man that's just like constantly like, okay, like I've had enough of this. Like, I read all this omnibus across a few days. 600 pages of this I read in one day. It was that good. This is Web of Spider-Man Annual number 2 with a really, really great story. Anna Cinti writes this first story with Arthur Adams on artwork. And it stars Spider-Man, but also Warlock from the New Mutants. This is one of like an all-time great, like underrated single issue comic. And there's a few of those throughout this omnibus. And that's kind of things that I like to look for, is like this one single issue is really, really great. I want to put a list together for my channel of like my favorite single issue comic books. because I do love the art of the single issue comic book and pacing it for that. That's one thing I love about classic comics, something that is missing in modern comics. But I digress. This was totally just a vehicle for Arthur Adams to draw all the cool stuff he wanted. I feel like Marvel editorial, David Letterman, shout out, fellow Hoosier. Marvel editorial and Innocent, you were just like, Arthur Adams, what do you want to draw today? And he was like, I want to draw. Did I skip the Speed Racer? Oh, a Speed Racer car. I want to draw David Letterman. I want to draw giant kaiju monsters, Godzilla walking the streets. So this is Warlock turning into all these things. If you're not familiar with Warlock, he has power to morph and turn into these things based on his technical, I don't know, mutant powers. Now he's King Kong. Arthur Adams, perfect for these kaiju stories. Robots, just fun. This is a fun story mixing in Warlock and Spider-Man. And Arthur Adams had a great history. This one's by Mike Mignola, which predates Hellboy. But he's Mike Mignola doing a monster comic with Hobgoblin. But Art Adams had this history of doing the annuals for Uncanny X-Men, so it's fun to see him do a Spider-Man and also including a mutant. All right, so this is one of the shifts where they're trying to find their identity. You can see on here, this is issue number 16, but it says, don't miss the first issue in Webb's daring new adventures into mystery and suspense. So that signified to me that they really were, that's what the identity they wanted this comic to be. They wanted to really hone in on that part. And for the most part, it does maintain that from here through the end. Not like as if like every single issue is that way. There are still some spot issues where it's like they revert back, especially when Larry Lieber does some of the issues. Larry Lieber is Stan Lee's brother. So he comes back and does a total like old school kind of feel to Spider-Man. But this one is like David Michelinie, who wrote Spider-Man for a long time, through Tom McFarlane, through, I think we have 4 omnibuses with Michelinie's name on it now. We have the Tom McFarlane Spider-Man, Eric Larson, and the 2 Mark Bagley omnibuses. Before that, he was writing these Web of issues, and this is Mark Silvestri, an early Mark Silvestri. Totally fits the style really, really well. Mystery and suspense. So this is J. Jonah Jameson is resurrecting Now magazine. I think that's a magazine that Ms. Marvel worked on back before this, but he's resurrecting it because Robbie Robertson is the publisher, or not the head editor in chief of the Daily Bugle. So J. Jonah Jameson needs his own vehicle to espouse his rhetoric about how Spider-Man's a menace or blah blah blah. But it's gonna be a nice high-paying gig for Spider-Man. He's gonna travel the globe with this new journalist. I forget her name. Is it Jordan something or other? I'm terrible with character names. Joy? It's Joy. So he's traveling with her. You get in all these hijinks and situations where he's trying to save the day as Spider-Man, but not tip off that he is Spider-Man, that Peter Parker, why would Spider-Man be in London or Spain or wherever they are? You do get the Magma disappearance, which is a classic, looks like Silver Age Jack Kirby creation. I don't know who created Magma, but he looks like a Jack Kirby figure. I don't think it was Kirby, but it doesn't seem like a throwback. So they go and they're trying to investigate one story, and then it turns into a bigger, unfolds into a bigger, larger story. Here's a really great cover. Where's Spider-Man? I love these distinct covers that look totally different. I wish comic book covers still looked like that back in the day. Here's Spider-Man, Peter Parker coming back to New York. You can see from his trip, that's all that remains of his Spider-Man costume. Here is one explanation of going back and forth between the costume, but earlier before that, there was no explanation. So just want to address that because some people might be like, well, that's why he switched, dummy. His costume was torn to pieces. This issue was really great because I used to have this issue. One of my earliest comic books I've ever owned was this issue, and I didn't even recognize it. It was just kind of like hit me in a nostalgic bubble when I was reading this. I was like, holy crap, I used to own that issue. I remember Humbug, this weird villain. It's just one of those things that you remember from being a kid. So here's an issue where there's someone mimicking, this could be like the Spider-Man meme, right? The famous Spider-Man pointing at each other meme, only they're in different costumes. There's someone masquerading as Spider-Man, so he's got to clear his name. Flip side in a way, this Slide was a great hero. He reminded me of if you watch the HBO version of, or HBO live action show for Watchmen, there's a character that had this exact ability. I don't know if that's where, who's the showrunner on David, starts with an L, I think. The guy that did Lost, whoever the showrunner was for HBO. I don't know if you read this issue and stole that from it, but I'd like to see more Slide. He was really cool. Villain, he's almost like the Flash, but he's a speed skater. He's really cool. I don't know. Sometimes throughout here you'll see these kind of hokey C-D list villains that you never heard of make these one-off appearances, and some of them will be super lame, and some will be kind of cool. Here's one of the ones that totally went back away from the mysteries and suspense story and kind of went to this cosmic sci-fi classic Silver Age story, and believe this is Larry Lieber. Yeah, Larry Lieber on Story and Pencils. Like I said, Larry Lieber was Stan Lee's brother, and he co-wrote Thor to begin with. He wrote the Spider-Man newspaper strip for decades. So he did have a history with Spider-Man. So you do get a lot of that, like the writers and artists switching on and off for periods of time, which can be jarring at times. But for here, I kind of enjoyed it because it's like these are all one and done kind of issues for the most part. A creative team would at least stick on if it was going to last 2 or 3 issues, but it wasn't jarring to read all these different. I love kind of a mixture of artists sometimes with these characters anyways, so that wasn't bothering me at all. I think this is the story. Yeah, this is a story that ends with Mary Jane and Peter Parker just being friends, and then all of a sudden they're married, and it's really weird. So this is issue number 29 is the side-by-side with X-Men, Wolverine's X-Men. That's like the back cover we have here on this omnibus. But like I said, on the interiors, they're all original coloring, which is great. Especially when we get to the main event. What you all came here for. That's part 2. Kraven's Last Hunt. Okay, so if you listen to me less long, I appreciate it. But Kraven's Last Hunt, one of the epitome of great Spider-Man comics, one of the great Spider-Man stories ever, written by J.M. DeMatteis, penciled by Mike Zeck, inking by Bob McLeod, Rick Parker on lettering. Just a truly, truly great collaboration. It lasted 6 issues, and 2 issues from Web of, 2 issues from Spectacular, 2 issues from Amazing. All of that's included in here. Now, the great thing is, with the original colors, Marvel has released this story in a number of trade paperbacks. They did a deluxe oversized hardcover at one point, but those were all with modernized colors. The old trade paperbacks might have had original colors. I don't know. But I do know the deluxe edition oversized had modern colors. And I don't like that. I don't like the modern colors at all. You can look up online to see what they look like. They're garish. They try to... I like this flatter color presentation like they were from the original. The modern colors just, I feel like, is such a clash with this classic artwork from Mike Zeck. So this is the first time we've ever had oversized art for this story in its original colors. So that's one major reason why you should buy this omnibus. And this story is classic. Basically, Kraven has gone crazy, and he wants to prove that he's better than Spider-Man, so he finds a way to bury him alive and then take over the mantle of Spider-Man and destroy a villain named Vermin, who Spider-Man could not defeat on his own in a previous story. And then once he defeats him, then he's proven that he's better than Spider-Man, and I don't want to spoil what happens from there on after. All-time great story. J.M. DeMatteis, truly one of the best comic book writers of all time. Every time I read more comics from him, I'm like, he just moves up and further up my list of favorite writers. Mike Zeck's artwork throughout this is amazing. It reads like a breeze, especially this 6 issues. You'll fly through these 6 issues. And honestly, it kind of was good motivation for me to get to the end of this omnibus, because the first 800 pages before this story, I was like, oh, I know Kraven's Last Hunt's going to be towards the end. I can't wait to get to that point. So that ends that story. Now we get to this 3-issue piece of Spider-Man with these awesome Bill Sienkiewicz covers. I love Bill Sienkiewicz covers. I think he's my all-time favorite cover artist. I would sit here and just stare at these covers and just try to figure out what art pieces he's using, what kind of media he's using for these covers. But this is part 1. And this is written by Anna Cinti with pencils by Cindy Martin. Not familiar with Cindy Martin prior to reading this, but I am now because I love this story. This 3-issue series or story could have fit perfectly with Vertigo Comics of DC. Now it's not mature in the sense that it's like violent or gory or over the top in any sort of nature like that, but it is mature in the sense that I think you've had to have lived life a little bit and understand some of the themes that they're going for and talking about to truly grasp the story. Here's another great Sienkiewicz cover for part 2. And basically, Spider-Man is captured by this psych ward, this clandestine psych ward that's doing these experiments on people. Now, they don't know that he's the actual real Spider-Man. They think that he's just some doofus on the streets that thinks he's Spider-Man, because there's a lot of people within the psych ward that think they're superheroes. But they're running all those experiments on him, doping him up so where he can't even, put a sentence together. But he's trying to escape. And also through the midst of this, he runs into these 2 kids with this domestic issue between... Oh, I just noticed that. That's a Zot t-shirt from Scott McCloud. That's really cool. I love little Easter eggs like that. These 2 children that are in the middle of this domestic quarrel between husband and wife. The husband is making money from the mob, and the wife doesn't like that. And so the kids are trying to escape, and they're trapped, and blah, blah, blah. So the story is just so deep and great. I love it. So that's the 3-issue Sienkiewicz story with Anna Cinti. This is the last issue of this is the last issue that's collected. Issue number 34, The Cosmic Gambit. And it's basically the Watcher and this guy arguing over, they basically bet on this football game. It's a hilarious story, but I love it. Spider-Man goes and jumps into this pickup football game with these kids, and they're like, that's not fair, you're Spider-Man. So you have to tie your arm behind your back, you can't use your super strength, you can't do this. So he has to dumb down himself as much as possible in order to play this football game fairly. Now, in the midst of this, the Watcher and this guy are kind of betting on who's going to win. And you actually see the score develop in this dramatic, after-school special sports movie kind of way. It's kind of hokey, but I loved it. It's kind of adds some levity to the super serious, deep stories that we got before that. Now, that was the last issue, but there is Giant Size Annual number 3. But this is a different type of annual. This is almost like a Marvel Who's Who kind of thing, where all these different writers and artists give you the origin story of Spider-Man, then Mary Jane Parker, Peter and Mary Jane's apartment, all these different characters. Then the cool part about this is, my favorite part about this, is you get some of these villains. Kingpin, he's a big one. The Rose is a big one throughout this book. But then you get these lesser known villains like Basilisk, the Big Wheel. Look at this stupid. I love these. These kind of hokey stories and hokey characters are my favorite. Cyclone, the Dark Rider, Drom, the Backward Man, the Grizzly, Jigsaw. He's a Punisher villain. But all these not even C and D list, but Z list villains. Every time I read one of these little bios, I was like, man, I need to go back and read that issue, because a lot of these were Marvel team up, which I'm excited to get that omnibus. I just want to go back and read those. So that was the whole annual volume. The whole annual number 3 is just that. Just a bunch of biographies. Here's some great covers by Bob Layton. I love this one. Here is, I don't know who the artist is on that, but it adds into the aesthetic design of the book. Now here's from Marvel Age 24. Here is Dwight Zimmerman talking about what Web of Spider-Man's going to be. It's a new spin-off title, and they're talking about it. So you get kind of in the days of before leading up to new Web of Spider-Man, what the goal was. You compare and contrast to what the actual thing, how it turned out. Here's a cool connecting cover. So Web of Spider-Man number 6 is in this book, but not Amazing Spider-Man number 268. Or was it? Oh, no, it was. But this is the connecting cover showing you side by side. The both pieces, which is really cool. Charles Vest cover with the original art. Cool thing about this is you can see Charles Vest painted this on the actual artboard. I love a Charles Vest artist edition. Scott Dunbier, if you're watching, we need that. Here's some more Charles Vest painted right on the artboard pieces. Original art by Art Adams. You see he wrote it to, or he signed this off to John. I wonder if that's John Byrne. But he probably gave it to someone named John. But what a great piece to have by Art Adams. And then there's some pencils by Mike Zack back here. And then here's like the trade, or the covers for some of the trade paperbacks they had for that. Here's Stan Lee, the introduction to one of those trade paperbacks, or I guess the hardcover. Stan Lee talking about Kraven's Last Hunt. And then J.M. DeMatteis is talking about it as well. And some more covers. So that's it. So this is a long video, but I assure you it was worth it. This omnibus is worth it. Thanks for hanging in there with me. If you hung on this long, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Tell me if you're going to pick this up. Write in the comments if you're going to pick this up or what your thoughts are on this series. I hope we get a Web of Volume 2 soon. That'd be really cool. I just noticed it doesn't say Volume 1 in the spine. That's kind of disheartening. Hopefully that's something they'll fix on Volume 2. But I digress. Thank you for watching. Give the video a thumbs up, like and subscribe, all that jazz. Keep talking comics. Have a good one.